Let's start at the very beginning here. Are we really turning the tables? Tell me, am I supposed to be your mortal enemy?
I'm not sure about that.
Well, Ken already has an answer, but no, I was going to ask down this end first.
Dude, I've given you 3 jobs. How can you even say that?
Oh no! I pitched you as the best program director in the history of the medium. No offense to anybody else, but what's your role as the PD in terms of me as the talent?
To give you an opportunity to do your best work and not lose your innate Jeff Katzness.
Right.
If I can do that, I did my job. If I try in any way, shape, or form to change who or what Jeff Katz is, then I broke it. You're not going to be successful, and I'm not going to be successful. So my job is to make sure I set it up so that you can be the most Jeff Katz you can be.
Fair enough. Tom, how much talent should that talent be?
Well, the talent that I've had a chance to be exposed to is large. The thing is, I have found with every talent that you work with, there's different hot buttons, different ways to coach them. Things you say to one talent you wouldn't do another. It's not one size fits all. So I was talking to an iHeart PD last week. He says, I love being a program director. I don't like being a program manager because I love doing logs and imaging, but dealing with egos and having to deal with things of that sort, which is very much part of the job because they're human and you want to make them feel good and you want to get the best out of them. I have found that it takes a little while to figure out everyone that's on your team and then take the time, because there's some people you can call in your office and in 2 minutes you can have a situation straightened out. Somebody else, it's 30 minutes later. But if they're important enough to you, you contribute what you need to do to get the job done.
Brad, let me ask you, Tom's talking about a guy who wants to be a program manager, not necessarily a program director. Logs and scheduling those board ops on the weekend, is that your job?
No. My job is to get the most out of my talent and our programming. My job is for something to be compelling that comes through those speakers. Everything that comes through those speakers is my job. And from the commercials to the talent to the news and everything else. I want to piggyback on something he just said though, because it's important for us, program manager, brand manager. I feel like I'm running a line of clothing when I call myself that.
Yeah.
My job is to coach. It really is. And I hate to use the sports analogy, but I can't, Tom made a good point. They're all different. They're motivated differently. If I don't get to know each of them in their own unique way, I won't be able to get anything out of them. I won't be able to turn them loose, as Ken said. So it's a difficult job. My big contention is we're not, I think somebody said it in an earlier panel, we have no farm system for program directors. You want to talk about a lack of a farm system for talent? We don't have any program directors coming up.
Well, let's talk about that. Ann, where's the next generation of program director coming from?
That's a really good question. At WJR, I've had the privilege of working with some incredible talent. J.P. McCarthy, Paul W. Smith, Frank Beckman. And now there have been big changes at the radio station. And I am finding that I'm working with much younger talent, new talent. And so, with some of the talent, the older talent, it's more about nurturing them. With the younger talent, it's more about mentoring them. Mm-hmm. But I really, really agree with Ken. I try to stay out of the way. So I set some parameters, and then I back away, and I let them go, because we need them to be entertaining, and as we know, interested is interesting. With regard to PDs, future PDs, we may see some future PDs in some of our younger talent. So I try to keep an eye on people that are interested in more than just being on the air. You get some people that really are interested in the behind the scenes stuff. Sure. And so I think there's some possibilities there, but I do agree, it's tough to find good program directors.
Tom, let's talk about where we're going to find these great program directors then. Somebody earlier had talked about perhaps from the ranks of producers. Do you have producers or do you have board ops?
We have both. And we do have some producers. I might be more fortunate than others being in New York, where you attract some of the cream of the crop. But it's very important to me to always have, for every position I have, who I would go to if tomorrow someone got hit by the car. I used to be, years ago, I'd have 2 or 3 people for each position in my head, but those days are gone. And with more and more radio stations not having overnight shifts where someone can break in, it's much more challenging. So I bring in some people, sometimes college age, at night when our studio is available, where they can cut some stuff, whether it's of a talk variety or a music variety, and I try to coach them, because if they're not getting that other than a rare quality college, it's hard. But I'd like to think that people do that for me. I like to give something back.
All right, Ken, what about program directors? So again, we're sitting here, these are some of the finest program directors that the medium has produced. There are people who are sitting out there thinking, these are the last program directors this medium has ever produced.
We're that old.
Yeah, well, most of us are closer to the end than we are to the beginning in this medium. Let's just be brutally honest.
Speak for yourself.
Well, okay. But where's the next generation of program director coming from?
The same place this generation of program director came from. Ann mentioned producers. Look at Tom. Tom started on the FM side and made that pivot over. You know, the same places, we're going to find them because they have the innate skill to A, listen, and be, like Brad said, coach, but C, they understand something about the entertainment business because they're on the producer side, they're on the FM side. So I really think if we're trying to look at podcasts for the next, which is just a bunch of bullshit, I mean, let's stop preaching the doom and the death of news talk radio. It was, thank you, one guy over there. Look, I've been coming to these stupid things for the last, 25 years? Right. And there's always been the new thing that was going to kill us. Right. Is it going to be what? It was, FM was killing AM, then TV was killing us, then the internet was killing us, then podcasts are killing us, then YouTube is killing us, then video is killing us. No, what's killing us is hedge funds and shitty managers. That's what's killing us. So it's beholden on the 4 of us and the other us in the other radio stations to find that next generation, and we're going to find them in exactly the same places we've been looking and we were found. So let's stop lamenting the end and start, nurturing the next, right, because it is the next what will carry on whatever legacy we've left them at our radio stations, and they're there, and they want to be there. There are still people in their 20s and 30s who respect radio and want to be a part of radio, and they're in college. Yes, they're fewer than they were. Yes, some of them don't even know it until you introduce it, but they're in all the same places. We need to look at them, cultivate them, and nurture them.
Well, it's a great point, Ken, and not surprising that you make it. For those who have done this for a long time, after 34 years in this business, I can go back, as you do, to the very first event that I attended, and there were people there telling me, why? Why would you get into this now? Don't you know that this time next week, every radio station is going to be dead? And we have heard exactly the same thing with a different replacement for decades.
Listen to Glenn. Glenn Beck said it, and he's involved in all of these other things. But what's the workhorse? Right. The radio show. Right. He didn't say the workhorse was the podcast or TV or video. He said the radio show. We need to remember that. We need to tattoo that on our chests. The radio show is the workhorse for all of it.
I would just dovetail on that and say it's the personalities. When I got to CCO and even all of the other news talk stations I've ever been at, you can't just be a utility. You can't just be breaking news, severe weather, Twins baseball, and Washburn-McCreevy Funeral Chapel ads or whatever it is. We have to build personalities. There does have to be a connection. And we can't just be a utility when they come to us for news. And I would say, I think you're right. They are there as far as the next generation of program directors. But none of us got into this business to be a program director. If you say that, you're lying. We all got into this business because we thought we were going to be on the air. So it is incumbent upon us to find those people who are nerdy and geeks like us who get into it. It's not the logs, though, that are going to save us. It is coaching the talent and getting the most out of our talent in terms of, I always talk about depth and range. And the joke that I like to give people and to leave them with as far as what we talk about on the air is that if your trash man and your congressman were to go on vacation in the same week, who would you miss more? So stop talking about politics all the time. It's relevance. I mean, it's 2:13 today. I haven't had one thing hit me that's from a political nature that has been most relevant in my life. It's been about food. What kind of pizza am I having? Traffic. Is my wife going to call, the credit card company that wants to for me to pay? All of those things are more relevant and more relatable. We need to be talking about those things.
Funeral home spots?
They were famous for Dave Lee. Yeah. They were more famous than he was.
I would agree with this.
Yeah.
In Detroit, News Talk AM 760 WJR, we're not dead. We couldn't be more alive. We are local now from 6 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock at night. And we rely heavily on entertaining younger talent, and it's actually working. So there's no question that AM radio is not dead. I really think that we need to lean into what we can do for the community and be heavily involved. We are heavily involved in the community. We do high school football. We have students involved with our play-by-play guy. They do the color analysis. We have over 200 remotes throughout the year. We're out in the community. And the other thing is we really need to lean into what we do best, which is when there's breaking news and the community needs us, we are there. Nobody else can do that. You cannot do that with podcasting. We just had a shooting incident at a giant local hospital just down the street from the Fisher Building. And the community was directly affected. So all those people going to the hospital, they needed to know. Right. All those people that were leaving the hospital, same thing. The suspect got away. He went on one of the freeways, headed out into the suburbs, and we were all over it. And we've been all over it for more than 100 years. We need to own it, and that is not going away.
Yeah, we just had one, obviously, last week with the Annunciation Church. And
yes.
We were in the middle of broadcasting from the Minnesota State Fair. If you've never been there, it's the end-all and be-all. Every TV and radio station is there. And we literally had to pivot away from that and send our entire news team down there. But it's not just the coverage. The coverage is what is expected of WCCO radio. It's the aftermath. It is the pulling together of the community and doing fundraisers. It is the talk about now what's next. We've done enough thoughts and prayers. That's been the big, thing in Minnesota. Thoughts and prayers aren't enough now. That's where we can extend the conversation. The coverage is obviously expected of us. Now we go above and beyond and we continue the conversation.
Well, let's take it back to Rush Limbaugh, who said you can go anywhere for the news. This is my take on the news. So I can go anywhere and find out that there was a shooting in Minnesota. I can find out about this terrible situation in Detroit. But if I'm in Detroit and I want to make a difference, if I'm in Detroit and I expect someone to make a difference, that's you at WJR, correct?
Absolutely. So we're not just giving you the news. Our personalities are talking about the news, and then we're inviting you to call in and talk to us. And the other thing that's really important that's been pointed out here is the charitable component. I mean, we raise millions of dollars every single year in the community. Our voice matters. And as long as we continue to do things like that, we're not going anywhere.
I don't think so. Talk about WSB and the stuff that you're doing raising money, Ken.
Well, there's another part to this too before we
Okay.
I mean, look, the money's good. We raised, over $2.1 million. I'm really proud of that. It's a great thing. But picking back on this conversation, and I don't mean to argue with Rush Limbaugh, because I do agree he is the greatest talk show host for a lot of reasons besides what he did on air, the things he did off air and championed himself. However, he's only half right there. Yes, you can only get Rush Limbaugh in one place, or Eric Von Hessler, Eric Erickson in Atlanta. You can only get them at one place. But while you can get the news anywhere, can you get the facts any place? And that's really, really important. And Brad can speak to this with Annunciation. I can tell you with the shooting at the CDC, while my own TV station, please don't, hey Garrett, you cannot put this in the frickin' okay, but while my TV station upstairs was talking about a shooting on Emory, we were talking about they were shooting the CDC. While they were talking about multiple gunmen, we were literally looking at traffic cameras and could see a guy under, like, we knew what was going on, and they were getting the facts from WSB, while all of the television stations in Atlanta were wrong. And it's a really crucial point, you know, when people want to talk about talk versus news and all of the other things, there's a trust in our radio stations because we do get it right way more than we get it wrong. And when people start to, you know, talk about, like the guy on the video with Beck talking about there's no need for AM radio and the other things, it's because he's never had to depend on one in a moment where he was going down the street that was on fire, when his house was under, you know, or neighborhood or kid's school was under attack. He didn't have to ever, and luckily for him, depend on facts and information that potentially could save the lives of him and his kids. And you know what? He's not getting that from TV. And if he's in his car or someplace where he's not sitting in front of TV, there's only one place he's going to get it. That's from the 3 stations here and the other stations represented out there. Right. So when we talk about those things, it's really important to talk about the trust in our brands and the fact that people depend on WSB or WCCO or WJR, and they have for decades because they trust us to tell them the important things at the times that it's most important. And when somebody gives you that gift, that they're giving you their time in a moment where they need you the most, you need to absolutely be on the top of your game and pay off that promise. Because if you don't, you're dead. And if we don't, we're dead. And so for me, it's about all of those things, but it's absolutely center in trust, getting it right, and giving it to the people when they need us the most, because that's when we are the most important.
Tom, let me ask you to follow up on something Ken said. Now, you notice Ken didn't mention you with the other two or his station, just for the
Only
record.
because Tom hadn't said anything, not to
No,
slight WOR or Tom.
No. But facts versus something else. What is the trust factor with WOR? Am I going there for news? Am I going there for your take on the news? Am I going there for the facts? Is it all part and parcel of the same?
Yeah, I mean, even though our talk show hosts lean conservative, our newsroom is run like Walter Cronkite used to run it, right down the middle. Right down the middle.
Got to teach these guys how to have a mic manners. Come on, let's go. People want to hear you.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there's a problem in a lot of conservative radio stations with the news anchors because a lot of them lean to the left and they try to massage the news, and I'm just not a believer in it. Give people the facts, let them figure it out themselves, and then our talk show host will give them the way they look at it. And, you know, on a lighter moment here, as we're talking about serious stuff and Rush Limbaugh, one anecdote I have about Rush, you know, for 20 years, Rush and I were in the same building at Two Penn Plaza. He was over at WABC, I was at PLJ, and a year before he passed away, I was listening to him on the radio, and we were the flagship at OR, and he did a tease going into a commercial stop set, which just blew me away. And I'm saying, here's a guy at this point of his career, still putting the effort together to give me a tease, to make me listen through 7 minutes of commercials. So I sent him an email, and I said, Rush, I got to tell you, one of the best teases I've heard all year. Please keep it up. And I didn't even know if I was going to get a response from it. 5 minutes later, I get an email from Rush. He says, you know, at this point in my career, I don't really get input from anybody anymore. So getting your email made my day, and I'm glad to see my effort is still cutting through. Thank you.
Wow.
So, you know, I think about it with a lot of well-known talent. When you get to a certain level, PDs might just leave them alone because they've gotten to this point. But just like a director to a movie or a play, they could be at their best, but they need some tweaking, they need some direction. There's more than one way to interpret something.
I would say you did something, though, that garnered that response. And it happens with all of us when it comes to talent, whether it's their 35th year or their 3rd year. you had his respect, or else he wouldn't have responded to you. And we have to, whether it's, somebody who's been in the business and is a Hall of Famer, you're right. Sometimes they don't get any feedback because it's like, I'm just going to leave them alone. They've been doing this forever. They obviously know what they're doing. And yet, if I've garnered their respect and I say something or I point something out to them, it's amazing the feedback that you get. We're talking about Nielsen and all of that. And I'm not a stickler for the clock, but I hate it when hosts take 25 minutes in a segment and then they're penalizing the listener by coming back for 3. And it's like if somebody just tuned in, they heard you for 3 and then 6 more minutes. And so I try to point out opportunities that they can be more balanced with content of the show. And when I did that for one of our hosts, Chad Hartman, who's been doing this for longer than I've been PD, he was like, you're right. And he listened. But I wouldn't have had that had I not had his respect. And so we have to garner that with them. But I think it's an easy mistake to make with big name talent or somebody who's been on your radio station for years to leave them alone.
It's also a reminder that we're always coaching. And some talent don't want to come sit in your office for 30 minutes and hear things. Some talent, it makes more of a difference if you pop in the studio and go, that was a great break. That was a great segment. That was funny as hell. I'll be driving home every now and again, and I'll text, Von Hessler going, dude, that was an awesome segment. Those little moments are probably more important to a talent, and what Tom did with Rush was probably more important to Rush in that moment than talking to a number of program directors about a number of things. Right. We're always coaching. Every word matters.
Catch them
with our
doing
talent.
something good.
Yep, absolutely.
So what else I've started doing is I've taken some of our more seasoned talent, like Paul W. Smith, who is now doing noon to 2, and I'll kind of pull him aside and say, or even Mitch Album, say, hey, you guys have done such a fabulous job for this radio station. Would you ever take so-and-so to lunch or to dinner to give them some advice? And then they end up sharing great ideas. So Paul gets some good ideas from the young talent, sure. And of course the young talent really benefits from the older talent's advice, and it
some
works.
of the more seasoned talent wants the coaching.
They love it, yeah.
Like there's I was in the car with iHeart's big talent consultant, and maybe I should say this, maybe I shouldn't, but we were driving someplace when I worked with iHeart, and his phone rings, and the other end of his phone was Ryan Seacrest. And Seacrest wanted to know, hey, did you hear that last break? What did you think? And I was literally flabbergasted because Ryan Seacrest, who at that time, isn't as big as he is today, but was giant, American Idol and he's fucking Ryan Seacrest. And yet he literally took a moment to call this guy and say, hey, what did you think about this break? What makes talent like that great, whether it's Rush Limbaugh, Glenn Beck, is they still want feedback from people they trust, right. And they crave it. They desire it. They absolutely are asking those people that they trust for more of it, and that's what makes them great. And we should not, be intimidated by our talent or forget the fact that sometimes what makes the people great is listening to the people they trust the most.
Well, let's talk about building trust then, right? Because everybody so far has talked about providing positive feedback. That was a great segment. Loved when you did that. Hey, did you forget the clock, right? Not said in, you forgot the clock, that's it, your key fob is not going to work tomorrow, right? It was, hey, come on, man, it's 3 minutes. You know what, you're right, right? All positive, friendly. How do you develop the trust? How does that talent learn to trust you?
Well, I think that the best way to do that is kind of let them go, let them do what you've asked them to do, and only get involved when there's a big issue, do you know what I mean? And say, hey, I really didn't think this worked out right. But they know that you're not going to do that, and you're not going to pick at them every single day. You're only going to get involved when it's absolutely necessary, and it's good for the radio station and good for them personally.
Tom, let me ask you, because here's your response to, you're reaching out, not even a response. You initiate this to Rush. Positive. Is there a percentage that Tom Cuddy reaches out? It's 85% of the time you hear from Tom, something's bad, and 15% is good?
No, my style is more to confirm for a talent you're on the right track, do more of this. Small percentage, because again, when you get to New York, you're not making stupid mistakes, but you can be swerving off the road once in a while. You could have had a bad night the night before. Mark Simone, who's a huge talent for us here in New York, and when I joined OR 13 years ago, he was my first hire, but something about his mindset, he stands up during his show every day, doesn't sit down. But when he comes into my office, he has never in 13 years sat down. Because in his mind, bad PDs over the years, it means you're going to be scolded. So he doesn't want to give a chance to sit down. So we have nothing but a joyful conversation. He'll stand up for the whole thing. But that's what makes him comfortable. So we all have our idiosyncrasies. And I remember once when I was executive producer of American Top 40 with Casey Kasem, I came in at a time
Name
when,
dropper.
Yeah. It's some of the funniest stories come from people that we all can relate to, but he was upset with our company because if you remember, an air check had leaked out about dead dog dedications, and it was being played by morning shows across the country. And he says to me, and
Not AI.
no, it was the real deal. And he says to me, I think ABC, who I worked for and owned the show at the time, I think you're trying to embarrass me during contract negotiations by leaking that out to radio. And I said, that is not true. He said, well, if it's not true and you want me to trust you in the future, I want you to find out where that came from. I said, let me try. I'll certainly do my best. Well, in those days, we had union engineers. We hadn't gone digital. So every time we did a show of AT40, it was tape with a blade. So I looked at the schedule to see which engineer was on duty the day that the script came with a dead dog dedication, and I could find out the guy who did it. And wouldn't you know, the guy who did it no longer worked for AT40. He'd been hired away by Rick Dees and his Countdown. And when he went over, he brought this to entertain Rick. So Rick hears this dead dog. Hey, man, I'm going to put this on my show. I don't know if you should. No, but don't worry about it. I'm going to put it on the show. Well, when Rick Dees airs it, morning guys across the country, hey, can I get a dub of that cassette? And that's how it went. And that's how I explained it to Casey. And I had the proof to it. And from that day on, I had Casey's trust. I took the effort to do it, and he trusted what I had said. So it's takes different things, but you got to make the effort. Sometimes time consuming, but if the relationship is worthwhile, you do it.
But you didn't lie to him. Like you told him, hey, I don't know, I'll try to find out. And that's the key thing about, look, we've all had hard conversations with members of our staff for all sorts of things. I mean, I'm not even going to share some of the things. But, you know, we didn't lie. Right. We didn't coax it with, bullshit to sneak it this way. It's like, look, at the end of the day, here's the deal, here's where we're going, and then here's what we're going to do together. Like, we're partners in this. So you can have really hard discussions, but when you get caught in that first lie or that first piece of BS, you're done. It doesn't matter, good news, bad news, whatever the news, you're over and done with. Right. So A, don't be a dick, and B, don't lie. Those are like the two things to having tough conversations because you're talking to egos.
It's the headline from this segment. Don't be a dick.
And
I think
don't
from Ken
lie.
Charles. Contrary to
By
what
the way,
you
Gary,
said.
you can quote me on that.
Yeah. Contrary to what Tom said, though, I make stupid mistakes all the time. So stay in Minneapolis and make my stupid mistakes. I think, in terms of trust and with the talent, I mean, obviously some of that takes time. But I've literally asked some of the talent point blank, do you believe that I want you to succeed? Because everything else I say to you is going to be, again, we go back to that word coaching, is going to be designed to make you better. Because if they don't believe that, then it's always going to be this onerous conversation where you're going to get on to me about the clock. The clock conversation is not one to say, what the fuck were you doing? It's, see how much better this can be? Think of your own listening habits. You just penalized a fan who wants to hear you. You went 25 minutes here where in the middle of that segment, you could have said, I got a lot more to say about this. You got to stick around with me. I'm going to tell you next why blank. Great tease, right? And then they stay with you. Then you have a more balanced hour. When you put it in terms that they get and will be to their benefit, most of them have never had a conversation about the clock where they they understood it afterwards, like, oh, this can work for me actually. Not it's punitive or I have to stay on the clock. You have to put it in terms where it can be for their enjoyment and their success as opposed to, this is the way we do things here.
And as program directors, look, words matter, but so do actions. And I can't tell you how many times, like if I'm wandering in the building at 6:20 at night, somebody will make the joke, oh, I didn't think programming worked after 6 o'clock. Now, it's not because of me, that's because of other program directors currently in the building and previous in the building who were gone on Thursdays or were gone at noon on Fridays and were never seen. You know,
Right.
If you have to ask the question, do you think I want to win as much as you do, then your actions need to speak way louder, because you should never, and this isn't a shot at you, ever have to ask that question.
No, it's not that we want to win. It's that I want you to succeed. It has to be individual for the talent.
Nope,
They
got it.
have to know that.
But you know what I'm saying? It's like they need to know that you've got as much skin in the game as they have in the game, which is really, really crucial, because, listen, talent have egos. Egos want to win. They need to know you want to win just as much as they want to win, and your actions about that, around having conversations, it doesn't even have to do with the individual talent, but your actions and how you handle things, because people are always watching. Whether it's a board op, a producer, a traffic person, a salesperson, they are always watching us. They are taking their cues from us, and we need to be very, very aware that our actions and our words always matter. And as long as they know that we've got as much skin in the game as they do, they will always work as hard as they can to work with you to get whatever you need done, because they believe and they trust.
You know, to Ken's point, I do that too. So if there's breaking news, if there's remotes, let's say that a producer gets sick and they need extra help, I just roll up my sleeves and do it. I get right in there with my team. And I do think they really appreciate it. They know that no matter what, I deeply care about that radio station, and I want them to be a part of my team and care as much as I do, and it really works.
Absolutely. I will tell you from the talent side, it absolutely works. When you see that program director, or whatever the title is this week, who says, I'm part of this, I'm on your team, the very concept of hard conversations now, easy life later is a wonderful one, right? Because if you're blowing smoke today and you're doing it again tomorrow, at some point, there's going to be a reckoning, and it's going to be a much bigger one than if we had simply said, hey, that 3 minutes at the end, let's move that down here. Everybody's talked about coaching. Tell me about protecting your talent. Ever called on to protect your talent?
I definitely try to protect my talent at all times. And I talk to my younger talent a little bit about branding themselves. So I'm trying to teach them and coach them about how I think they can brand themselves for their futures and their careers, not just for the radio station. So we talk a lot about, you know, thinking about their social media presence. Young talent, all talent needs to have a social media presence nowadays. And also we talk about podcasting. And I say to them, I am here to support you. You know, this is a giant, beautiful 50,000 watt radio station. You have my help and our resources to be successful. So just come with me. I'll walk with you in your journey. But I really think it's important to spend time having them understand that they have to brand themselves. You know, we hear Glenn Beck, we see everything he's done, all of the other big syndicated hosts. Our local talent needs to take a leaf out of their book.
I think it depends on what you're asking us to protect them from.
Well, let me ask you, you've
That's a
got,
good point.
you've got the salesman who absolutely positively knows what should be on that program. You've got, you said, no, wait a minute, no,
Maybe.
you said that everybody up here wanted to be on the air. What if you've got the general sales manager, the general manager who always wanted to be on the air and therefore knows everything that should be on the air and is not going to you, the program director, is going to go around you and talk to your talent.
Happens all the time, and you just have to call them on it, and hopefully you have the backing of the market manager in terms of doing so. I think to your real question in terms of protecting talent, I mean, we started this conversation with turning them loose. So to a large extent, you know, they're going to step in it. You know, if they're doing their job right, they're going to push boundaries, and we just have to know when to pull them back. Yes, I do protect them sometimes from overzealous salespeople when it comes to asking for an interview with a partner or a client. I have to protect them sometimes from social media can be both their best friend and their worst enemy. They can put themselves out there and get into tiffs with fans that they have no business doing so, or it's just not in their best interest. The talk and text line, fantastic. Boy, can it elicit a lot of wars back and forth, verbiage-wise. These are all gifts that we have to learn to use, and they are teachable moments sometimes when they are abused.
You brought up sales, Jeff. There's always going to be the seller that's trying to take advantage of the talent. And it's our responsibility, it's a good opportunity to protect the talent. I've had a number of times where, client only wants the spot updated, once a quarter. Can I only pay them once a quarter? It's like, no, you're using their voice every day. Their talent, their voice, their name is a valuable commodity. You will pay whatever the normal weekly talent fee is. It's not about how much they work. It's about the value of the talent to move the product for your client. And clearly they're doing it. So I'm not going to let those salespeople, cheat our talent out of money that their talent deserves. So there's plenty of opportunities and plenty of times where we've had to do that. I had a situation at KNX. So the local BMW dealers of Orange County, and Orange County is much more of a red state than a blue state, thought that KNX was way too liberal a radio station. So the GSM would come to me and it's like, okay, give me an example. Well, they didn't really give me an example. Okay, call me back when you get an example. Go on for a month, and then a month later, 2 months later, get a phone call. They're squawking again at BMW because they think you're too, left wing. Okay, great. Give me an example. Don't get an example. Blah, blah, blah. Will you go on a call with the BMW dealers agencies? Yeah, I'll absolutely do that. Sure. Blah, blah, blah. We're too right wing or too left wing. Yeah, yeah. Okay, can you give me an example? Well, I'll have to call get with the dealers and I'll let you know. And they finally went away. But the moral of the story is I wasn't going to overreact. I wasn't going to, start going, hey, we got to watch. It's like I knew our news team and I knew what we did. Right. We were doing credible, balanced journalism, and I'm not going to share the crap that I have to deal with sales with them. That's protecting your talent. And I had their back. If they gave me an example and we did do it wrong, well, you know what? Then we're going to fix it. We're going to use it as a teachable moment or whatever it is. But 10 out of 10 when it comes from sales, that it's somebody with an axe to grind, and it is our job to protect whether it's our news staff, our talk staff, or whoever it is, because you know what? That's my problem. It's not their problem. They need to go on the air and be great and not worry that they're going to piss off a sponsor by being too left, too right, too center, or whatever it is.
Right. Everybody has referenced at some point news as well as programming. So give me the lay of the land here. Are you wearing the hat of program director and news director, or do you have a news director reporting to you and handling the newsroom?
Yeah, at WR we did have a news director till recently, but with budget cuts, so I oversee the newsroom, and we also have help from Chris Berry at 24/7 News, and some of his staff supplements our newsroom. So yeah, you're doing two things, and news is a big part of the radio station. We do a lot of on-street reporting since it's New York City. So yes, do both.
You're doing both. Ann?
I'm doing both, yes.
Difficult or no?
No, I
No,
enjoy it.
really?
I started in the news department and I love it.
Okay.
So I'm doing both and I think it's working. I do have somebody who helps me with the news and community affairs, but I am doing both.
All right. Brad?
I have a news director, and he is very hands-on and is great with our news team, but he reports to me, and they all know, obviously, that, it's not just the news division. I hate this delineation. I know we have two different functions, but listeners come to us for information, for entertainment, for engagement. They don't sit there and go, well, that was the news, now to the talk show or whatever. I mean, they're sitting there, and hopefully we keep them for information, and we keep them there we bring them there for information, and we keep them because of engaging and compelling and relatable and in-depth hosts and whatnot. So my job is that all meshes together. And, we have expectations for our news team just the same way that we do for our talk show hosts.
Yeah, I have a news director. Her name's Amanda Moyer, and she's an amazing partner in this journey of WSB. I'm a tough program director to be a news director before because I ran a 24-hour all-news station.
Right.
You know, I helped write some of the news manual for iHeart and other things. I've got a lot of news experience as a news director, as a reporter, and some other things on the news side. However, you know, she's a news director. She's operating the news part of what WSB is every day, doing the day-to-day stuff. My stuff is to make sure I get the things out of her way, and I'm looking 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months down the road so she can focus on whatever it is that news department needs to do in the moment in the next 24 hours. And it's a great partnership. But she is an awesome news director, and if I'm not floating around like I'm here, I know she's doing everything that needs to be done. Last year at Barrett's Summit, the Appalachian High School shooting happened. And my phone's blowing up, and I'm on stage doing something in my pocket. I knew something serious was going on, but never once was there a moment where I felt like I had to go, oh, excuse me, I got to go take the phone. I knew whatever was going on in the world at that moment, Amanda had it completely under control and was doing the right thing so that when it was over, got off stage, called, checked in. She was absolutely doing the right things. And while, yes, we continued to talk throughout the day from 1,000 miles away, she did a great job. So, I mean, I have a great news director. I'm very lucky. Also because WSB is a news station that does talk. WCCO is a news station that does talk. You both might argue with me, but both of your stations are talk stations that do news, and it's because you've got WWJ and you've got 1010 wins in the marketplace. You're never going to out-news those guys.
You're absolutely right.
But you can get them on day 2, 3, or 4 of the story when it's not a news story anymore, it's a talk story. So our stations have to operate differently, and it's why we have news directors who do what they do versus those two stations where it's both. I know it would be great if they probably both had news directors, but because it's a little different in how they cover and what they do, it makes sense to roll it up for those stations under one umbrella.
Let me ask you to follow up on that, Ken. You're talking about the news story on day one, and that is Amanda and your news team at SB. Days 2, 3, and 4, you've got Eric Erickson now, who has turned it into a talk story based on fact, based on honest reporting. I don't think anybody would ever doubt that. Is there a certain amount of cooperation? Is Eric able to say, hey, Amanda, I need one of your reporters? Would one of her reporters be available for a talk show?
Yeah, they are, but they're not going to get put in the position to have an opinion. And that's a very big difference. And with a lot of stories, the Appalachian shooting, Annunciation, like in the moment, it's not a talk story. It's a news story. I don't want opinion on my radio station about that time. We're going to do the news coverage for it. But when it pivots and it's time for opinion, there's no better opinionators than the ones I've got on WSB. If they want to talk to my reporter who's out on the scene or covered the story or covered the trial, absolutely, and a pro like Eric Erickson or EVH or Mark Aram, they know not to ask them, so what do you think about this? And they don't cross that line. So absolutely, but I try not to blur the line between news and talk, and I don't blur it the other way. Eric used to be part of the morning show, and he had a regular segment. Love Eric, but I didn't want to cross the line in a news show having Eric part of the news show. So I tried very hard not to blur that line between news and talk, and it's crucial for the success of WSB.
All right. I thank you so much.